My sister cheated with my useless husband and parents backed her new family, but what happened next made them all regret betraying me. Jake and I had been married 8 years. We had 2 children, and I was the only one holding our lives together. I worked, paid the bills, took care of the kids, cooked, cleaned, everything. And Jake? He was having a hard time. That's what he always said when I asked him why he didn't work. He had so much free time, but instead of helping me, he spent it at the gym, scrolling through his phone or apparently staring at my sister. "You should take better care of yourself, Amanda," he'd say. "Look at Elizabeth. She works out every day. You should follow her lead." "Yeah, maybe you should get a damn job, Jake," I'd shoot back. It always pissed him off, but I didn't care. I was tired. We had moved in with my parents for a while because money was tight. Not that Jake seemed to mind. And Elizabeth? She was 20, single, and loved the attention. She and Jake would stay up talking in the living room, whispering and laughing, even after I went to bed. He had more conversations with her than with me. I noticed the way he looked at her, and I saw the way she participated, stretching in front of him in her tight little gym clothes, asking him to help her lift things she could easily carry herself, giggling at things that weren't even funny. My gut told me that something was wrong, but I ignored it because I didn't want to believe it. Then one afternoon, everything fell apart. My parents were at work, the kids were at school, and I had gone into town to run some errands. I told them I'd be gone for a few hours, but I finished early and came home earlier than expected. The house was quiet when I walked in. Something felt wrong. I made my way upstairs, and when I reached our bedroom door, I didn't hesitate. I pushed it open, and there they were, my husband, my sister, in our bed. They didn't even bother to explain. They just stared at me, trapped, exposed, and completely untroubled. I don't remember saying anything. I just turned and walked out. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get my keys in the ignition. I drove without thinking and ended up in the parking lot of a gas station miles away. I sat there, clutching the wheel, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Then the calls started, over 27 missed calls. Jake, Elizabeth, my mother. I ignored them all. I wasn't willing to listen to any of their excuses. Instead, I picked my kids up from school and took them to an amusement park. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to face them. I just wanted to be with my kids, to pretend, if only for a few hours, that everything was normal. But deep down, I knew that everything had changed, and I wasn't going back into that house as the same woman who'd left it. When I pulled into my parents' driveway that night, the kids were half asleep in the back seat, clutching their stuffed animals from the amusement park. They had no idea that their whole world had just been shattered. I, on the other hand, had never felt so awake. My heart was pounding, my fingers tightly gripping the steering wheel. I sat there for a moment, staring up at the house. The lights were on. They were waiting for me. I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and walked inside. Jake, Elizabeth, my mother, my father, they were all sitting in the living room, as if this was some kind of intervention. Except I was the only one who had been wrong. I told my kids to go upstairs and turn on the cartoons, making sure the volume was high enough so they wouldn't hear what was coming next. Then I turned to my parents. "So," I asked, "you both know what happened. What do you have to say?" My mom sighed. "Amanda, if that's what they want, maybe it's for the best. Let them start their own family. Don't interfere." My father nodded. I stared at them, waiting for the part where they said they were joking. That part never came. Elizabeth didn't even look at me. She kept her eyes on the floor like a child caught stealing candy. She didn't say a word, no apology, no remorse. And Jake? He leaned back on the couch like he didn't care and said, "Elizabeth takes better care of herself than you do. You let yourself go, Amanda. Maybe if you made an effort." I think I laughed. Or maybe it was just the sound of something inside me snapping. I looked around the room at these people I had spent my whole life loving and trusting, and I realized in that moment that I didn't belong here anymore. I turned to Jake. "I'm taking the kids and filing for divorce." "Fine," he said. Just like that. No fight, no regrets, as if the last 8 years had meant nothing. And me? I felt nothing for him either. I felt no pain. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt done. But I didn't leave empty-handed. That night, while everyone else slept, I packed my bags. I gathered every valuable thing I could find. Cash, jewelry, anything I had bought with my money. Then, first thing in the morning, I went to work. Step 1, get the kids out of school. I walked into the front office with a forced smile. "We're moving. I need their records transferred." The receptionist barely blinked. 5 minutes later, I had everything I needed. Step 2, quit my job. I walked into my boss's office and handed in my resignation. No notice, no explanation. I was done. Step 3. File for divorce. At the courthouse, I filled out the paperwork and turned it in. When they asked for Jake's contact information, I gave it without hesitation. Let him figure it out for himself. While all this was going on, I took the kids to a hotel, a small cheap one across town. Jake never even called to ask where they were. Because why would he? They're your responsibility, Amanda. That's what he used to say whenever I asked for help, whenever I begged him to step up to be a father. Now his words were working against him. He didn't complain, didn't demand to see them. He didn't even ask if they were okay. He was too busy playing house with my sister. But when I finally emptied the family account and closed it, that got his attention. I was back at the hotel with the kids when my phone started blowing up. First, a text from Jake, "Where's the money?" Then another, "Are you kidding me, Amanda? You emptied the account?" Then the calls started. I let them ring. 5 minutes later, another text from Jake. "I'm getting a lawyer. You can't just take everything." I rolled my eyes. He was getting a lawyer with what money? Then came the real kicker. My parents called. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, my mother's voice was cold. "Amanda, I don't know what you're thinking, but what you did was selfish. You took everything. You could have left something for the new family." The new family. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. I blocked them all. The next morning, I packed up the kids, checked out of the hotel, and hit the road. A new city. A fresh start. And the best part? I was finally free. Or so I thought. Because 2 weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. "You ruined everything. I need to talk to you. Please, Elizabeth." When I saw Elizabeth's name pop up on my phone, my first reaction was to block her. But something stopped me. "You ruined everything?" What the hell did I ruin? She got what she wanted. Jake, my parents' approval, the new family. They all acted like I was standing in the way. So why was she reaching out now? I didn't answer. Instead, I put my phone down and focused on settling into my new life. My friend Sarah had helped me find an apartment, a small but cozy 2-bedroom, and had even gotten me a job at the local office where she worked. The kids were enrolled in a new school. Life was quiet, peaceful. Until the second note came, "Amanda, please, I need to talk to you." I ignored it. Then, a few days later, a third message. I messed up. I don't know what to do. I should have deleted it. I should have let her suffer in the mess she made. But my curiosity got the better of me. I texted back, "Not my problem." She replied immediately, "Jake isn't who I thought he was." I stared at my screen, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Of course he wasn't. I started to type tough luck when another message came through. "He's dangerous, Amanda. I think he might hurt me." I froze. Jake? Dangerous? He was a loser, sure, a cheater, a selfish prick, but violent? This wasn't the Jake I knew. Before I could decide what to do, my phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me to. I held the phone to my ear. "Hello?" A shaky breath on the other end, then Elizabeth's voice. "Amanda, I'm scared." I didn't say anything. I just listened. Elizabeth was crying, rambling. She told me that Jake had started drinking more, that he was angry all the time, that he called her names, put her down, controlled her. He wouldn't let her leave the house without his permission. I couldn't help smiling. Oh, now she knew how it felt. But then she said something that made my stomach sink. He told me he regrets choosing me. Now that was interesting. Elizabeth went on to say that she was trapped, that she didn't know how to get away from him, that he was getting more aggressive, more unpredictable, that she was pregnant, and she was afraid of what he would do when he found out. Pregnant. I felt nothing for her. No pity, no sadness. But what she said next sent a shiver down my spine. "He keeps asking about you, Amanda, about where you went." I gripped the phone tighter. "He says he deserves his money back, that you owe him, and if he finds you..." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what he's planning, but it's not good." I felt my pulse in my ears. Jake didn't care about the children. He barely cared about Elizabeth, but money, that was something he would come after me for. And now he was after me. I took a deep breath and made a decision. "Elizabeth," I said, my voice cold, "you've made your choice. You wanted him. You got him. I'm done saving people who betray me." She began to sob. "Amanda, please." I hung up. And then? What? I packed my kids, grabbed my essentials, and within the hour we were gone. Because I knew Jake, and I knew he would find me. I just needed to make sure I found him first. I knew Jake wouldn't just disappear from my life. A man like him, lazy, entitled, and completely incapable of taking responsibility for anything, was never going to let this go. and I was right. A few days after I left town, a message popped up from an unknown number. "You think you can just take everything and leave? You owe me, Amanda." I sighed. Here we go. I didn't reply. I knew that ignoring him would piss him off more than anything else, and sure enough, the messages kept coming. "I'm getting a lawyer. You can't just take all my money. My parents are helping me fight this." That made me laugh. His parents? The same ones who barely acknowledged his existence? The ones who always made it clear that he was a disappointment? Yeah, right. And then another message. "Your parents gave me money for a lawyer. You won't get away with this." This one was different. My parents, the same ones who told me to let them have their new family, were now paying for Jake to come after me. I felt my stomach twist, but it wasn't sadness. It was pure anger. I had sacrificed for this family for years. I had done everything right. I had worked. I had raised my children. I had held my marriage together, even when it was sucking the life out of me. And now they had taken his side. I clenched my jaw, took a deep breath, and finally decided to answer. "Jake, let me get this straight. You didn't fight for the kids. You never even asked where they were. You made it very clear you didn't want them." I could see he was reading my messages right away. I imagined him sitting in that disgusting little room he shared with Elizabeth, furiously typing, deleting, and retyping his reply. I didn't give him the chance. You don't want to be a father, you just want money. And now, instead of getting a job like a normal adult, you're using my own parents to finance your little tantrum. He finally replied, "You've taken everything from me, Amanda. I deserve something." I actually laughed. I deserve something. He deserved something? But instead, I had picked up the pieces of my life while he sat on his ass, waiting for someone else to save him. So I decided to end this conversation once and for all. "Jake, I want to remind you of something. You betrayed me with my sister. You humiliated me. And you verbally abused me. For years I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. If you want to go to court, I'll tell them everything. How you called me names, how you made me feel worthless, how you grabbed me when you were mad, how you threatened me, how you refused to work and left me to do it all alone. I will tell them that you are unstable. I will tell them that you never cared about these children, and I will make sure you lose in the most humiliating way possible." I waited. Read. No response. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He had once grabbed me hard enough to leave red marks. He had punched a hole in the wall after a fight. He had thrown a glass across the kitchen when he was drunk. There were no police reports, no official records, but we both knew the truth. And if it came down to my word against his, he wouldn't stand a chance. Finally, after a long silence, he sent one last message. "You're so bad, Amanda." I smiled, blocked him. Jake could throw all the tantrums he wanted. He could waste my parents' money on a lawyer, cry about how unfair life was, pretend to be the victim. But at the end of the day, he didn't want his kids. He didn't want a family. He just wanted me to keep supporting him. And now it would never happen again. For the first time in years, my life wasn't a constant storm of stress, exhaustion, and walking on eggshells. No Jake, no Elizabeth, no parents pressuring me to accept their betrayal. Just me and my kids in a new town building something better. And for the first time in a long time, things were actually going well. The place was small, but it was ours. A 2-bedroom rental in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe. The kids got to pick out their own decorations, and watching them excitedly put up posters and string lights on the walls made my heart feel lighter than it had in years. They weren't just adapting, they were happy. Sarah had been a lifesaver, getting me a job in her office right away. At first, I was just grateful to have a steady income again. But within a few weeks, I began to notice something strange. People respected me. At my old job, I was just another overworked, underappreciated employee. But here, my boss actually noticed my work. One afternoon, she took me aside. "You know," she said, "you're one of the sharpest employees we've had in a long time. There's a management position coming up. If you're interested, I'd like to consider you for it." A promotion? No one had ever offered me anything before. I had spent years holding it all together for Jake and the kids. And now? Now someone was offering me a chance. Recognizing me. I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't hesitate. I'd love to. Emma, my daughter, had always been shy, but one day she came home from school beaming. "Mom, I made a friend." Her name is Lily, a sweet girl in her class who happened to live in our apartment complex. Soon the two of them were inseparable, having playdates, making bracelets in the living room, whispering secrets in their little giggling huddles. Caleb, my son, had always been full of energy And now, for the first time, he had an outlet for it. The soccer coach says I'm really fast, he told me excitedly one afternoon after practice. He wants me to play forward in the next game. I hugged him, feeling so damn proud. That's awesome, buddy. Before it was all about survival, just making it to the next day. Now we lived. One night, as I was tucking Emma into bed, she looked up at me with her big, sleepy eyes and said, "Mom, you smile more now." I froze. I hadn't realized it, but she was right. I was smiling more, laughing more, sleeping better. I was embracing myself for the next insult, the next argument, the next betrayal. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's because we're finally free." And for the first time in a long, long time, I actually believed it. Months passed, then a year. Life was good, better than it had ever been. The kids were happy, I was thriving at work, and the past felt like nothing more than a bad dream I had finally woken up from. And then one day, I got a message from Sarah. "Sarah, oh my God, Amanda, you are not going to believe what I just heard." I stared at my phone. A strange feeling crept up my spine. "Me what?" She called immediately. "Remember how you blocked everyone? Well, I ran into someone from your old town, and apparently things have gone to hell over there." I sat down, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Your parents? They lost everything. Turns out they gave Jake money to go after you legally, but Jake being Jake blew most of it on gambling and booze. He never even hired a real lawyer, just some sketchy guy who took his money and ghosted him. And when your parents found out, they freaked. But the real kicker? They had taken out a loan to help Jake fight you in court, a loan they couldn't afford. And when they couldn't pay it back, the bank took their house." I blinked. "They're homeless?" Sarah hesitated. "Not exactly, but they had to move into a tiny apartment. They lost their savings, their reputation is in tatters, and people in town are talking." I found myself utterly dumbfounded, my mind reeling as if caught in a whirlwind of disbelief. How could this be? The very same parents who had dismissed my pain so callously, urging me to step aside and not disrupt the so-called new family that Jake and Elizabeth were forging. Those same parents had sacrificed everything they held dear in a misguided bid to prop up that fractured illusion. They'd poured their resources, their stability, their very legacy into supporting the man who'd shattered my world, only to watch it all crumble around them. It was a bitter irony that twisted like a knife, and yet, as Sarah's words hung in the air, I sensed there was more to this unraveling tale, layers of consequence that deepened the chasm between who I once was and who I'd become. "All right, hold on," Sarah pressed on, her voice laced with a mix of schadenfreude and genuine concern. "But wait until you hear the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday. Your sister Elizabeth? She's utterly trapped in that nightmare with Jake, and from what I've gathered, she despises every second of it." The reversal was almost poetic, a karmic boomerang that had come full circle with startling precision. It turned out Jake hadn't undergone some miraculous transformation in the wake of his choices, no. He remained the same indolent shadow he'd always been, stubbornly unemployed, perpetually deflecting blame onto anyone but himself, a perpetual victim in his own self-scripted tragedy. But now, the tables had flipped in the most unforgiving way. Elizabeth, once the carefree seductress basking in stolen glances and illicit thrills, had become the beleaguered backbone of their chaotic household. She was the one juggling endless shifts at whatever low-paying gig she could scrape together, footing the bills that piled up like unspoken accusations, and single-handedly nurturing their child, the tiny, innocent product of her impulsive betrayal. Yes, she'd gone through with the pregnancy, bringing a new life into that toxic orbit. And Jake? He doled out cruelty to her in measures that eclipsed even the emotional barbs he'd once reserved for me, his resentment festering into something sharper, more corrosive. She actually mustered the courage to try and bolt from him, Sarah added, her tone softening with a hint of reluctant sympathy. "Packing up the baby and everything, but here's the gut punch. Her own parents slammed the door in her face. They see her as the villain now, the spark that ignited the whole family inferno. They hold her accountable for the fallout, for dragging their name through the mud, for every shattered expectation." I nearly sputtered on my coffee, the hot liquid catching in my throat like a suppressed cough of incredulity. Setting the mug down with a clatter, I leaned forward, my voice steady but edged with the raw edge of vindication. "Wait, just to make sure I've got this straight," I said, piecing it together aloud as if verbalizing it could anchor the absurdity. My own sister threw away her loyalty, her morals, everything, for a guy who's now systematically dismantling her existence, turning her into the exhausted caretaker she once pitied me for being. And my parents? They gambled away their home, their security, their peace of mind, all to bankroll this deadbeat's delusions of grandeur against me. And after all that, every single one of them is wallowing in a misery of their own making? Sarah's response was swift and unequivocal, delivered with a nod that I could almost see through the phone. Spot on. It's like watching a slow-motion car crash you called from a mile away. I eased back into my chair, the worn fabric of the seat creaking softly under me, and let the weight of her revelations settle like dust after a storm. The room around me, the sun-dappled kitchen in our modest new apartment, with Emma's crayon drawings taped haphazardly to the fridge, and Caleb's soccer cleats kicked off by the door, felt like a sanctuary, a deliberate contrast to the chaos she'd described. For so long I'd carried this invisible burden, this gnawing conviction deep in my bones that I was somehow deficient, perpetually scrambling to earn the affection of those who should have cherished me without condition. I'd waged silent wars against my own self-doubt, clawing for scraps of validation in a marriage that drained me dry, in a family dynamic that demanded my unwavering devotion while offering little in return. Every late night poring over bills, every tearful plea for Jake to step up, every overlooked milestone with the kids, it had all reinforced this lie that I wasn't worthy of better, that love was a battlefield I had to navigate alone, armored in exhaustion and quiet desperation. But now, staring at the fragments of their downfall through Sarah's recounting, it crystallized with painful clarity. Their betrayals weren't reflections of my shortcomings but mirrors of their own unraveling flaws. Greed masked as loyalty, denial dressed as wisdom, selfishness cloaked in righteousness. In that suspended moment of reflection, a quiet epiphany bloomed, not as a thunderclap of rage, but as a gentle unfurling of release. I'd emerged from the wreckage not just intact, but transformed, stronger, unapologetically whole. The people who'd once conspired to diminish me, to rewrite my story as one of failure and interference, had inadvertently authored their own collapse, a cascade of poor choices that left them adrift in the ruins they'd built. And me? Oh, I'd claimed victory, not through vengeful schemes or bitter vendettas, but by simply choosing to rise. There was no lingering acrimony poisoning my veins, no seething fury demanding retribution. Those emotions had long since evaporated, burned away by the steady warmth of my new reality. Indifference had become my most potent shield, a serene detachment that freed me from their gravitational pull. I had my two incredible children, their laughter echoing through our home like a daily symphony, their small hands in mine a reminder of the unbreakable bond we'd forged in the fire. I had this life I'd meticulously rebuilt, steady employment that valued my contributions, friendships that nourished my spirit, mornings where I woke without the specter of dread. Above all, I possessed a profound, hard-won peace, the kind that settles into your soul like roots into fertile soil, unshakable and alive. And in the grand tapestry of it all, that tranquility, that quiet triumph of self-possession, was the ultimate, unspoken revenge, a testament to the woman I'd always been beneath the scars, now fully, fiercely free,